All right, so today we're going to talk about a couple of what they're calling special parallelograms. All right, first one is a rectangle. A rectangular is a parallelogram. And of course, a rectangle has 4 right angles. All right, now since a rectangle is still a parallelogram, it's got all the properties of a parallelogram that we talked about last week. Opposite sides are congruent, opposite sides are parallel. 4 vertices, sum 360. Diagonals bisect each other. All right, but then in this case, it also has 4 right angles. And let's just put and its diagonals are congruent. All right, so there's a check it out on the bottom of page 420 that you can take a look at. They ask you a couple questions that relate to a rectangular gate. And this G to K is 48 inches, and L to J is 30.8 inches. And they ask you to find H to J. And H to K. So H to J. It's this top piece, isn't it? 48. Yep, so this would be equal to 48. And H to K. Okay, so take a look at H to K. This diagonal. All right, so we know that the diagonals bisect each other, and in this rectangle they're congruent. So if L to J is 30.8, then G to L is 30.8. All right, so what does that make it? 61.6? So H to K would be equal to 61.6. All right, so rectangle, it's got same properties as a parallelogram. Diagonals are congruent, and the shape itself contains 4 90-degree angles. On the top of page 421, a rhombus is another special quadrilateral. All right, so a rhombus has 4 congruent sides. It is a parallelogram. So it has all the same properties as a parallelogram. Diagonals are perpendicular. So let's say diagonals are perpendicular and bisect a pair of opposite angles. So 4 congruent sides. It is a parallelogram. So it has all the properties of a parallelogram. The diagonals are perpendicular, which means they intersect at 90 degrees. And they bisect a pair of opposite angles. So here's what a picture of that looks like. So a rhombus is like a pushed over square. So where these diagonals intersect each other forms a 90-degree angle. Now these diagonals, they form 4 angles. So we got angle 1, 2, 3, and 4. Alright, so in this case, angle 1 is going to be congruent to angle 2. And angle 3 is going to be congruent to angle 4. Alright, that diagonal AC splits this entire angle in half. So that piece is congruent to that piece. Same thing up here. Those are congruent to each other. The other diagonal does the same thing. So if we call this angle 5, 6, 7, and 8, then 5 is going to be congruent to 6, and 7 is going to be congruent to 8. So these angles are congruent to each other. Some of the other questions you'll get related to these are, you can be told that side AB is 4x plus 7. And side AD is 9x minus 11. And you could be asked to find the distance from B to C. So in this case, if you have to find B to C, opposite sides are congruent, and in a rhombus, all the sides are congruent. So if you can solve for x, you can substitute, and then you could find the length of each side. So if you take 9x minus 11 and make it equal to 4x plus 7, subtract 4x from each side, 5x minus 11 will be equal to 7, and you could add 11 to each side. So 5x will equal 18, and you could divide each side by 5, and x equals 3.6. If x is equal to 3.6 and you're trying to find out how far it is from B to C, you can substitute it. So you can take 9 times 3.6 and subtract 11 from it.
21.4.
And so B to C would be equal to 21.4. All the sides in this case would be equal to 21.4. Look at the top of page 422, please. And there's a picture of a rhombus up there. And you're told that this angle, where the diagonals intersect, is equal to 2y plus 10. You're told that angle WST, this angle up in here, is y plus 2. You're asked to find the measure of angle WSR. Alright, so WSR, you're looking for this angle right here. Right here, in the middle. So if you're given this picture, you know from the rules you just wrote down that 2y plus 10, this angle where the diagonals intersect, equals 90 degrees. So you can subtract 10 from each of these. Your 2y is going to equal 80, and divide by 2. So in this case, your y is equal to 40. If your y is equal to 40, you can substitute it for angle WST. 40 plus 2 is 42 degrees. And then you also know by rule that the diagonals bisect the angles of the rhombus. Alright, so if WST is equal to 42 degrees, then WSR is also equal to 42 degrees. So the exercises are a lot like last week. You just have some different rules that apply to the rectangle and the rhombus. Alright, so take the diagram they give you, apply the rule, solve for the variable, and then substitute. That way you can find segment lengths and you can find angle measures. Does anybody have any questions? Alright, on page 424. Six and 7. 10 through 15. Eighteen through 23. When you're done with that assignment and you've got your notes in front of you, please check Edline for homework.